I'd like to introduce our experts who will be participating today. Derek Bowman, Director of Data Products for Wiland's MarketSignals. Derek is responsible for managing the product lifecycle from ideation and market analysis to development, launch, and ongoing commercialization. Derek brings more than 25 years of experience, including product and business development roles at Axiom, shaping and executing data product strategies, with a deep understanding of the consumer data ecosystems and how third-party data can enable profitable outcomes for brands across industry. Brian Wool is Wiland's Vice President of Data Enterprise Sales. Brian is a seasoned executive in the consumer marketing, data, and technology space with over 2 decades of experience driving innovation and growth at industry-leading companies. Prior to joining Wiland, he held senior roles at Claritas, ComScore, and Neustar, where he played pivotal roles in developing and commercializing data-driven solutions that help brands better understand, reach, and engage their audiences. Throughout his career, Brian has specialized in transforming complex consumer data sets, demographic, behavioral, and transactional, into actionable insights and marketing intelligence. His deep expertise spans audience segmentation, identity resolution, measurement, and omnichannel targeting, helping marketers to optimize their strategies across both digital and traditional media. So, Brian, can you get us started and explain why we're here today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura, and welcome, Derek. Appreciate everybody taking the time this afternoon. We're excited to have you here. Whether you're a longtime Wiland client or just getting to know us, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to learn more about how we're helping brands stay ahead of the curve in an increasingly competitive marketing landscape. Today, we're going to focus on introducing everybody to MarketSignals, Wiland's newest innovation that gives brand marketers a powerful new way to understand and engage with consumers based on what they're actually buying. This isn't modeled or inferred data. It's actually what people are buying. We'll walk you through the marketplace trends that we see shaping the consumer expectations, the evolving role of data in marketing strategy, and how MarketSignals can give you a competitive edge by delivering greater personalization, precision, and performance. So, for more than 20 years, Wiland has been the go-to partner for leading brands, many of them that you can see on the slide in front of you. They're using us to acquire high-value customers and increase customer loyalty. Our powerful predictive data solutions are helping brands reach consumers who are actively in market for their products and services. Building on this legacy, we've developed a groundbreaking new solution we've called MarketSignals to help brands achieve even higher levels of personalization, precision, and performance in their marketing efforts. Next slide. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. So the slide that we're looking at here right now, I've been thinking about this, and consumers, I think we all know and understand, they have a high level of expectation from the brands that either are engaging them or, that they're engaging with. So no matter what research, we've looked at, whether, the McKinsey that we're looking at here, McKinsey study that they conducted, whether you look at Gartner, Forrester, eMarketer, the trend is the same, right? According to the McKinsey's research, 71% of consumers expect brands to deliver a high level of personalization. And then 76% report a high degree of frustration when brands miss the mark. And so when I thought about this is, there's a lot of research around this, but it's just reasonableness that, consumers expect this. And there's a lot of things in the marketplace, and we'll touch on some of those this afternoon of, really why that's happening. But I think the real important part of this study that McKinsey did and is supported by, numerous others is on the chart on the right. When it comes to personalization, consumers' expectation around that is around product promotions. It's around product discounts. It's about offers related to a product that they're in market for. And it's really not surprising that a consumer's expectation has, reached this level of expectancy. If you think of, companies like Amazon, who have really been perfecting their product recommendation engine for the last 20, 25 years, right? Like they're doing an exceptional job, and, their growth is, phenomenal. And, a large part of it, is based on that. And then you have companies like TikTok and Instagram that have, increasingly raised the bar by delivering highly relevant content based on past behaviors and engagement patterns by consumers. So at Wiland, we've recognized what we think is a significant gap in the market. Well, many data solutions rely on inferred or modeled behaviors that might be, driven from behavioral or contextual data. There's absolutely no substitute for knowing what consumers actually buy. I think Amazon has proved that, right? And others are, trying to do the same. So MarketSignals fills that gap by providing brands with access to real transaction level data that we believe is unlocking new levels of precision in customer targeting and acquisition. And so we're going to dive deeper, into what MarketSignals is and how it works. And so for that part, I'm going to hand it over to Derek to walk us through a little bit of the finer points of MarketSignals.
Right. Thanks, Brian. That McKinsey study is interesting. We in the data business and in business in general, people read a lot of surveys. There's lots of reports, slicing and dicing consumer sentiment and expectations. And I always go back to, what do I think of it as a consumer? I know my demographic profile better than anyone, and I know what I expect from the brands that I do business with. And a lot of this analysis and a lot of the things we know about consumer engagement, you can apply to yourself. You don't have to think too hard about what are the expectations and what are the frustrations. Channel proliferation, whether it's media, how you can buy things, whether you go to Amazon or whether you go to your local retailer. If you're buying takeout from a neighborhood restaurant versus going to a chain restaurant, what do you expect and what are those experiences like? So it's about knowing your customer, right? And that's the whole business framework, right? Keeping, and growing your profitable customer relationships. As Brian hinted to, MarketSignals is Wiland's latest innovation and offering to commercialize to brands and marketers to help to solve those questions. Know your customer. We deliver it in primarily two ways: data enrichment, which is matching and appending data variables, spending signals, media signals, different pieces of information about your customers to your PII and return it back to you. If you're not able to share your customer data because of privacy reasons, or you have use cases that require you to ingest the data, we also offer it as what we call a marketing file or a file install, where we provide you with the marketable universe of consumers that meet your needs. That could be everybody in the United States, or it could be 3 states, or it could be a honed down version of that. That's how it's delivered. That's the core delivery, or what the tangible result of the product is. But as I mentioned, the space that it thrives in and lives in and that it has value in is fuel for acquiring, retaining, and growing profitable customer relationships, which everyone's trying to do. How you do that, how you meet those expectations that Brian was talking about, how do you know what their expectations are? I know that they visited me 3 times. They've hit my website twice, but they haven't bought. What are their expectations? How can I engage them better? Well, you do that through data. You do it through first-party data, and you do it through third-party data. Third-party data is what MarketSignals is. That's the category. When you take your first-party data and you combine it with third-party data, it becomes a strategic and a tactical asset. It can inform decisions and applications across your enterprise, across the customer journey, across the funnel, if you want to look at it from a funnel perspective. But it informs different use cases and is used in different ways depending on what stage and which tactics you're using. It could be as simple as refining an audience. by age, by income, by spending amount in a category. Now that's my profile. I want to target those people. I want to activate them online. I want to send them a piece of mail. I want to include them in my email campaign. However you want to activate it. And it can be as analytical and as complex as using it in measuring performance, taking campaign results, doing profiles, feeding it into your own analytic models, adding more power to the predictiveness of what you already use and the disciplines that you're already leveraging to understand your customers, to get to know them. So in short, it gives you information that you don't already have. It adds precision and fuel to what you're already doing to manage these core framework segments of acquiring, getting, keeping, and growing profitable customer relationships. People talk a lot about personalization a lot. That's a broad category, but personalization is kind of the core of the expectations. Personalizing each interaction, whether it's somebody that's in front of your point of sale at a brick and mortar, whether somebody's interacting with your website, whether they're buying for the 20th time this month, personalizing it, knowing how they've engaged with you and what their expectations are, and maybe what they're going to do next, and what their value to your brand is, by understanding other signals about them. Where are they spending their money with my competitors, things of that nature. So it's all about data, right? And data is a broad topic, and data is kind of boring, but the things that you can do with it, and if you leverage it right, it can really add a multiplier effect to what you're already doing. There's a quote at the bottom of the screen from Hillary Mason, and she's probably not well known, but she's a data scientist that's turned entrepreneur. She's got a startup in the gaming technology, or the video gaming technology, but she's got a quote that I thought was really apropos for this session, and it's: the core advantage of data is it tells you something about the world that you didn't know before. That's what we're all looking for as marketers, understanding what I don't understand. I know my customers as well as I can. I collect all the data from all the interactions, and I've got market research that tells me what product buyers are, but there's a lot I don't know. And that's what MarketSignals was designed to bring to market. So what are the signals? So there's thousands of them, right? Everybody that provides data to marketers and to brands is going to talk about how many pieces of data they have, how many audiences they can activate. But it's important to understand the scale, and the scale is important to establish credibility, right, and confidence that a lot of information is being synthesized, analyzed, and created into discrete pieces of information that can be matched and appended or delivered as a PII-based individual record that can be added to what you're already doing with your first-party data, merged with it, or taking simultaneously, using it for prospects and customers, using the same framework, the same data that ties the two together. So MarketSignals is a lot of things. It's data, it's deep, it's individualized, it's national, it's built from billions of signals that represent trillions in spending. There's social media signals, there's core demographics, how old somebody is, how much money they make, how big is their house. It's all the things that you want to know about a consumer that puts them into a life stage or a segment, and then goes deep into how they behave and the underlying signals that cause that behavior. It's one thing to know somebody spends $500 a month on cat food, but you can be logical and say they probably have a lot of cats. Well, maybe they board cats. You don't know the underlying reasons unless you have other signals to help inform that. And the more information you have about how to interact with that consumer, the more impactful your messaging and your efforts are going to be. Brian mentioned spending, and I just mentioned it as one of the highlights of what MarketSignals is and what some of the ingredients are. In spending, we believe, and it's pretty well acknowledged that where people spend money, how much they spend, how frequently they spend is one of the key drivers and indicators of what they're going to do next. It is the tangible manifestation of what everyone's trying to do. Spend more money with me, spend it more frequently with me. When you think of this product category, when you think of this service, think of me. I want to be a top of mind. That's what advertising does. Marketing takes advantage of the advertising for call to actions. So where people spend is going to be one of the biggest predictors, and that's the foundation, and that's the where the name evolved from. Market signals. Signals from the market. Who's the market? They are your customers. They're the people that live in these 3 states because that's where I do business. They're the people that are above this age because that's where my market appeals to. They're whatever they are to you is your market. And we have the signals from those consumers that will allow you to understand what you don't already know. It's not all spending. Like I said, that's the core, and that's going to be where the performance is driven. But you have to have the other data to make that work too. The demographics, the lifestyle, what people like to do when they're not at work. Where do they go on vacations? What are the things that make them them? When you want to know your customer, it's not just knowing the relationship they have with you, but also understanding the relationships they have outside and what makes them who they are. So those personalization tactics, the segmentation, the personas, the offers, the creative, and evaluation, the looking at your market and knowing where you have opportunity and where you may not. It's another valuable use of data. It's knowing who not to market to, right? You have to have information to know who's not in market, right? Or information about who doesn't fit the core best customer profile. Having that data helps you make those decisions with confidence and with precision. And precision is what comes from transactions, right? They're the most precise signal you can have. Somebody spent this amount of money on this product at this brand on this date, and this is the 4th time they've done it in the last 3 months. That's powerful information. Added with what you already know about that consumer, as well as those underlying motivations, those intentions, those interests, the hobbies, where they live, where they go on vacation, all those things combined to create a persona, a profile, or a decision or a personalization tactic is going to increase the likelihood that your message is going to be received and those expectations that Brian talked about are going to be met. One of the cool things that we can also provide with this level of precision and depth is where are they spending money in your category, not with you? What's your share of their spend? What's your share of wallet? Who are those competitors? Maybe you can know the share through research studies and total spending in the category. You can get a pretty good idea without having to have a discrete piece of data. But what you don't know is who are those competitors? Who am I competing with, and where's the pressure coming from within other industries that may be putting marketing pressure or financial pressure on my core customers? That's information that can be distilled out of market signals. All right, spoke too fast. So thousands of pieces of data, billions of signals, that's a lot of information. Having all the data in the world is not going to do any good if you can't organize it and activate it, and knowing which data to bring in, what data is most important, and what data is specific to your use cases, your market, your industry, and your needs is the way to unlock the right signals, the right data. So what we've done is created, I wouldn't call them packages, I'd call them collections of data specific to industries and specific to behaviors that address the core use cases by our customers in different categories. And we've given them cute names intuitively. Alpha Market Signals. So we have Giving Signals, which is built specifically for the nonprofit to help understand donor behavior and manage those donor relationships and fundraising tactics. Fan Signals built for the sports and entertainment market to understand where fans are spending their money, where sponsorships may be indicated based on spending, as well as spending in categories such as live events, sporting events, merchandise, concessions, things like that. Then retail signals, so brand level, channel level signals about where people are spending their money at retailers. And that could be a grocer, home improvement, sports apparel, women's apparel, across the categories. Travel signals, where people spend money in the hospitality industry, which airlines they spend on, what kind of transportation do they use? Are they using Ubers? Are they using cabs? Are they using rail? Are they renting cars? What are the brands that they're renting the cars from? What agencies? How often do they spend? Everything around the travel industry and kind of that whole ecosystem that supports it, not just the destination, but the hotels, the planes, the trains, and the automobiles. Then entertainment signals, which are signals about spending behavior related to entertainment categories like movies, music, video games, podcasts, actual spending in social media commerce, performing arts and live events. So we've organized it into industry segments, but we've also created ways that you can test it or evaluate it so we can help you understand how the data behaves within your own customer environment. And those are like match tests where you can get a feel for how much coverage. We talked about depth, right? You have to have depth and you have to have coverage, or scale as we call it today. Really great information on a small portion of the US or small portion of your market is not going to do you much good. It'll give you some intelligence, but it's not actionable unless it's got scale. If it's not accurate, it's not going to be profitable. It's going to be wasteful spending. And if it's not deep enough, it's not going to help inform the right decisions. So match test gives you a quick glimpse of that, gives you the overall coverage, depth on your actual customers. So it's a report that gives you a really, really good view of what MarketSignals can do for you. We can also do a data test where you actually match and append the data to your CRM or a segment of your CRM or even your prospect database. So you can take it back in and evaluate it for a period of time and see how it interacts with your own systems and how the taxonomy works and all the things that you need to do to make data usable within your environment. Then we also have what we call a prescriptive data analysis, and that's where we'll take your customer file or a segment of it and analyze it against all the market signals, against a baseline or a reference population, the United States, to give you insights. That's what the chart on the upper right is representing. It's just a screen grab from one of our analysis, and it gives you over and under indexed percentages for all the different behaviors and market signals. Gives you your customer file count, so you can see where your opportunity may lie or where it may not lie. Against these different profiles for being in market for airlines or extended stay hotels, for example, on this chart. So that's to give you the tools you need, and it gives us information to help you understand which market signals are going to be most important to you. So with that, I was going to turn it back over to Brian. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Brian, but
yeah, you used the word, and it's interesting for practitioners like you and me that have been at this for a long time. We've always, we talked about intent and trying to predict what someone's going to do. And what I think is so innovative about MarketSignals is we're taking some of that guesswork, or we're taking a lot of the guesswork, I should say, out of the intent in market or trying to predict what someone's going to do, as opposed to informing our customers in what someone actually is doing. And that leads me to the next slide around the different types of data, right? And, it's interesting. I've, participated and, have gone to, several conferences in the last 12 to 18 months. And, the way that we talk about zero-party data, first-party data, second-party, third-party data, all these different types of data, and there's been somewhat of this renaissance around first-party data again. And I'm scratching my head, because, I've been at this for quite a while, and I've always worked with a customer's first-party data. Now, 20 years ago, when I started in this, marketplace, we maybe didn't really talk about it as first party data. We talked about it as a, customer database, a CRM file, an in-house file, whatever, right? But we've been doing this for 20, 25 years, right? For quite a long time. But I think it's the technology that has brought a lot of this to bear in the way that brands are able to work with their first party data in conjunction with third party and second party data, right? And so, this is a really simple, way to think about the different types of data, right? And so on the far left-hand side, we have a typical brand's view of their own customer data. And, going to these conferences, participating in them, talking to different brands, like they are so laser focused on their first party data. And the reason being is it unlocks so much insight into what their current customers are doing, right? How much are they buying? What are they buying? Are they buying through a mobile app? Are they buying, in response to an email campaign? Is it a net new customer? Using, media mix modeling, what really drove, that last sale, right? But if you think about it, what makes this first party data, a brand's data so valuable, it's what a customer is buying, right? Then you have what I like to think of as traditional third-party demographics. And traditional third-party demographics is essentially what a brand can't get access through via a transaction with a customer, right? Like, if they're doing surveys, maybe they can get some age, income, gender information. But for the most part, they're not getting that as part of the transaction. And this information has a tremendous amount of value, traditional third-party data, right? But, it's the traditional demographics, age, income, gender, urbanicity, suburbanicity, whatever, that might be. And then it's the lifestyle, hobbies, media preferences, and then shopping preferences. And so a lot of brands will take their first party data and combine it with third party data, just like we have here at Wiland, to predict or understand who might be in market. And moving over to the right is what Wiland is actually delivering to our customers. It's a more comprehensive view into the transactional part of what a consumer is actually spending. So, let's go back and look at a typical brand's view is, they know that someone bought a jacket, a boy's jacket, a men's jacket, a thermal shirt, right? And so, okay, great. But if I also know that April has spent is spending money at REI and Patagonia, she frequents Target, Nordstrom, she just renewed her subscription with, HBO Max. It's taking a lot of that guesswork out of the lifestyle and hobbies and the media preferences and shopping preferences. We're actually delivering to our customers what April's preferences are and where she's buying, things today. And so, a really great use case is, we worked with a national department store chain, and they came to us and said, we have a high margin business in health and beauty category. And so while they had a lot of loyalty data, conversion was stagnating against them marketing health and beauty products to their customer base. And so what we were able to do is, work with their first party data and then identify a large, portion of their customers, their existing customers that were really heavy purchasers and frequent purchasers of the health and beauty category, and then actually identify specific brands within the health and beauty. And so by working with Wiland, they were able to see a 27% lift in category sales, right? And so, that's just one use case. And, we could take that same use case and use it for new customer acquisition as well. But, working with someone's first party data, it's really low hanging fruit. So I know we're, getting closer, we're at time. And so I wanted to open it up to the audience and ask if, we have any questions from the participants or the attendees today.
Yeah, thank you for that insight on how to be strategic and tactical when you're utilizing this data. Market signals really can help marketers to make smarter and more predictive decisions today. We did have a few questions come through on the chat. So the first one is, how often is our data updated?
I can speak to that one. So simple question could be a complex answer. So not every piece of data is updated at the same time. So we operate in data marts. So we build data marts every 2 weeks. So every model that we have is going to be updated with new fuel, new pieces of data to score them. The models themselves aren't updated. We get new transactions in, we get new consumers that we have identified from the various sources in continuously. So each 2 weeks, the data mart's updated. That doesn't mean every piece of data changes. No, that's pretty intuitive, right? But I think the easy answer is every 2 weeks, and then specific categories are updated depending on the type of data it is and the availability of fresh data.
Perfect. Another question that came through was, can you describe what you mean by transaction level data?
Yeah, great question. So, I think that in the simplest form, it's, think of, when you're checking out of a store, whether that's in person or online, point of sale, it's that level of granularity that Wiland has access to. And just to put it into perspective, I was participating in a conference, and as many of you may be aware or may not be aware, but PayPal just launched PayPal Ads, and their speaker, the product leader was talking about them seeing 25% of all transactions across retail, and just to put that into perspective, Wiland seeing in excess of 40% of the same level of retail transactions, right? And so as much as they're seeing, we're seeing maybe 15% more. So it's that that real point of sale data.
Okay. Another question, what match rates to first party data are you generally seeing?
You want me to take that one, Brian?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so obviously it depends on the condition of the input data, the PII. Not all PII is created equal. We accept name and postal, name and email only. So the mix of those is going to affect the match rate. However, from an industry perspective and working with a lot of other providers over the years in competitive situations and actually working at other data providers, we're seeing industry match rates at parity or above, depending on the type of PII that a client has. So in general, 90%, 85% of core demographics. You add in other categories, the more data you have to match to, you're going to see, we're going to see mid 90s in the matches. But again, those are general terms. The cleaner the input data is, and the more complete the PII is, the better matches you can have. But we do have approaches and an identity process that we've built over the last 20 years that can recognize even fragmented PII at a really high rate.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add to that anything above 75% is considered exceptional, and seeing that we're getting that 90% is just it's phenomenal. I don't think you're gonna find match rates anything close to that.
Great. We have time for one final question, and that is, what are the most common use cases where your customers are seeing the most success?
Yeah, I can take that one. And I would three specific areas, right? It's lookalike modeling, for new customer acquisition, customer loyalty. And then, the third one is, adding, just a whole nother level of hyper personalization to both new customer acquisition and then, increasing customer share of wallet through loyalty marketing. Those are, the three biggest areas where, I see our data and, working with, companies every day, having the most benefit.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We actually did have just one more final question come in through the chat. Does your data cover countries outside of the USA?
No, it's a US-based data today. Maybe a future development, but today everything we talked about is US-based.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Derek, Brian, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would, for anybody, that is interested in learning more, we're available to, help you think about how you can use this data. We typically, and what Derek and I and the team have offered to anybody that's interested is a complimentary evaluation of our data. And so I urge anybody that is has some first party data or has some restraints with even accessing some of their first party data, engage with us. And there's ways that we can help you think about leveraging our data. And in a complementary way where we can provide some insights back to who we believe or who we know your customers to be, and how to most effectively engage and reach them. So thank you.
All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Derek and Brian for sharing their thoughts and their experience, and I hope that our attendees were able to take some actionable advice on how to elevate your marketing with Wiland's MarketSignals. If you found the value in the information that we shared today, we'd love your feedback. A short 3-question survey about your experience will show up after the webinar ends. And as a registered attendee, you'll be notified by email when the webinar is available online for viewing again, or if you want to share it. If you asked a question that we weren't able to get to, we will get back to you directly. And if this conversation prompted any ideas or questions for you, please feel free to reach out to Derek or Brian directly or email us at info@wiland.com, and we will provide more resources or answer any more questions. Again, thank you for your time and for being here today. We hope that the information we've shared will be valuable to you and your marketing success.